Hey guys, hope you're doing well. In this video, I'm going to be walking you through how we completely replace Clay.com with a Clay replica built inside the Claude Code terminal. Now, if you're a B2B founder or if you're a sales leader or a marketing leader, then this video is for you. Hi, my name is Michael. I'm the founder of Prospectology. We help B2B, fintech, HR, and SaaS companies build the top of the funnel for the further price of an SDR in-house team. Now, let's get straight into this video. So this is going to be a very good one, guys. So I'm going to do a live build using my voice, using Whisperflow. It's a voice-to-speech text app. Not important which one it is. There's so many out there. I just happen to use this one. But what we're going to do is I'm going to give you a thought process on where Prospectology is today, where and kind of where I see how it was before to this present day. So if you don't know who I am, I worked prior to working with Prospectology or starting my own agency for the last 18 months. Prior to that, I worked in bootstrap startups across SaaS, fintech lending, open banking, payments in the last 6 to 7 years prior to starting my own agency. And I've done all the roles you can imagine, SDR role, AE roles, BDM roles, but all of them had they had the same fundamental situation, which was build pipeline. You had to build pipeline, right? So, I'm not going to lie and say I've been in the game for so long. I haven't. However, I can speak on when I actually started my first SDR role and pre-Clay. So I'm going to talk about Clay because Clay for us is like, in my opinion, it was a game changer. And I'm going to give you a bit of context as to what I was doing before Clay.com, that era, so pre-Clay, and then what we currently do today. So again, for context, we help B2B fintech clients, HR, and SaaS companies build the top of the funnel for the further price of an SDR team. So we actually have a done-for-you service, which is done-for-you outbound services, but we also have a new service available, which is called the Prospect Engine, where we actually build the engine for you and then hand you the keys to the kingdom, and then you go ahead and build your own outbound pipeline and own engine itself. But what I want to do in this video today is I really want to touch on what Clay does for us and where we can kind of replicate it and obviously improve it and then some, right? And so on and so forth. But as you can see on the screen, we've now replaced Clay.com. Don't get me wrong, we still use Clay. Clay is a big part of what we do. If it wasn't for Clay, I probably wouldn't have been able to set up my own agency. And again, that's kind of the same situation for a lot of other owners out there. When they blasted onto the scene, obviously they kind of, I wouldn't say revolutionized, but they really, really elevated the outbound game. But again, let's get into that throughout the video. But staying to the end, because then I'm going to do a live build as well, speaking into the Claude Code terminal, and it will build us a campaign from start to finish, a test campaign. And I'm going to show you a list building, the ICP fit criteria, how it does waterfall enrichment, again, pulling in multiple data sources to increase coverage. So a lot of what Clay does today. And then I'm going to show you some of the copywriting we can create as well by using a crib sheet, a markdown file, and a campaign config. So again, this might sound all confusing, but I'm going to show you what it looks like. High level, not going to go into too much detail and give everything away, but stay into the end so you can see how we actually do that. But prior to getting into that, I really want to talk about my kind of background, right? So I remember when I was an SDR in a mailing house in East London back in 2018/19, I'm pretty sure Apollo and Zoom Info and a Cognizant, these tools were probably around them, but I didn't have no idea who they were or what they did. But I remember working in a mailing house, and the number one job was just to build pipeline, right? And get onto the phone as many prospects as possible. So dial after dial after dial. But I remember I used to set my day up in a way which would be like Monday, Tuesdays would be cold calling days, and then Wednesdays, Thursdays would be like admin/cold email, LinkedIn outreach days. And I remember we used to do mail merges. We used to do like literally copy and paste personas from their website, try and find their email that way, copy and paste it into an Excel spreadsheet, and then just literally hope for the best, right? And even that process, even though that sounds really like unheard of today in this present moment with all the tools we have available at our arsenal, that was quite effective. Quite honestly, we're still booking calls, right? Then the game changed slightly. And again, we can talk about spam filters and Google, Microsoft bringing in new sorts of regulation. But again, that's a story for another day. But what ended up happening is I remember starting a fintech lending role, a company called SteadyPay, and they tasked me with one job, and that was to build pipeline. And I remember starting that role, and they were like, look, we want you to book as many meetings as possible for us, hand it over to us as the founders, and we will close the deals. And that was kind of the arrangement. And I remember they asked me, okay, what are the tools you need? So like a builder, you need your tools, you need your skill, you have your skill set, but you need your tools to kind of go with it and to do your job appropriately. And I remember this was about the time when, again, I probably was quite late to the party, but this is when I discovered Apollo back in 2021. At this point, I'd probably been operating for about 5-6 years anyways. But I think at that point was when a lot of other individuals probably discovered Apollo as well as Zoom Info. I think Zoom Info, even to this day, is quite expensive, right? However, these were the B2B data sources that we needed. And it was probably, they were one of their kind, and also Cognizant as well, to mention them. But I remember when using these tools, it was like revolutionary. And again, I'll scroll back up here. And I remember the kind of automation I set up was crazy. It was so basic, but so effective. And I remember when they asked me at the company called SteadyPay, they asked me, okay, what do you need to do your job appropriately? I was like, I think one of the tools I asked for was Loom, because I was quite big into video messaging. I felt like it broke the noise with, in the inbox compared to emails and LinkedIn outreach. And I remember I set up an automation, which was literally, as you can see on the screen here, it was like an Apollo. I would use a Apollo Chrome extension, go into LinkedIn Sales Navigator, go onto their profile. It was so painful because it's so manual, right, and time consuming. And I remember I'd use a Chrome extension, you'd add contact, and then what I did with the automation was that via Zapier, I would then push that into the CRM of our choice, which was Pipedrive, as a true source of information, and also just to keep on top of the pipeline. But what happened is when it would push into the CRM, I set up my pipeline stages, which I set up myself, and whenever anything landed into the lead stage, which was the first stage of the whole pipeline, it would then automatically enroll it into a 6 to 7 step sequence. If it found email, it would then enroll it. If it didn't, it would just stay stagnant into the pipeline stage of lead stage. And then obviously I would go ahead when it would be Wednesday, Thursday, wherever it may be, or wherever the day was, then I would focus on the leads that didn't have an email address found via Apollo. Then I'd just probably do some LinkedIn outreach or do some cold calling. But believe it or not, that sort of approach there, which was so basic compared to today, what we have today in our arsenal, it was booking me in around about 5 to 10 calls on a weekly basis on autopilot. So it was crazy. So the reason I mention this is because I just want to give you a bit of context as to what I've seen from my own experience, and kind of where we're heading and where we're at today. So 4 eras of the same job. So ultimately, again, I'm going to touch on this anyways, nothing has changed fundamentally about outbound, cold outbound in particular. Nothing's changed. The fundamentals are the same. However, now we have the tools to augment or speed up and be more efficient. We have more data points. We've got more things in our arsenal to really create high converting outbound campaigns. Now, the fundamentals haven't changed, but the tools have. Now, everybody, we tend to get this, I get this as well. We get shiny tool syndrome. So we hear a new tool and we jump on a hype and blah, 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 blah. I remember, we're going to talk about Clay now. So I remember discovering Clay.com towards the end of, I would say 2023. Didn't really pay any mind to it. I saw it blow up on LinkedIn. And I'm going to talk about why they were genius in what they did in terms of marketing, right? So like I said, end of 2023, discovered it. Didn't actually start using it until, I would say, mid 2024. Again, this is probably me being late to the party, because at this point, so many people have probably become, to an extent, an expert at this point in Clay, using Clay. But one of the big things that, one of the biggest friction points I noticed with Clay.com was that you had to, no matter who you was, whether you was very technical, whether you was a RevOps automation expert, whoever you was, you still had to go for a lot of trial and error. Now, I remember when I implemented Clay or advised my head of sales at one of my other startup companies that I joined, at an open banking payment style, I said, look, let's get Clay, because Clay can do X, Y, Z. I heard about it, I'd done a bit of research, but at this point I hadn't actually used it myself. So kind of convinced my head of sales for us to pay for it. And this actually led me down the path to actually start playing around with it, trial and error. I remember burning so many Clay credits. I remember it was becoming a little bit pricey. There was too much trial and error. I was hitting too many ceilings. But at this point in 2024, a lot of individuals, especially online, YouTube, LinkedIn, started to create a lot of workflows, and they were doing show and tell. Now, this is where I think Clay had really, really hit the money, right? So I think Clay are geniuses in the marketing team, or whoever actually owns the company, or whatever their strategy was. But what they did was one thing, and they did one thing, which was it was a self-serving platform. So you went onto the platform, you created your own workflows, and then you done a show and tell. Now, I truly believe this was one of the biggest reasons to their success, because it was a case of like the sky's the limit, and there was no ceiling to what you could do. And I think loads of operators at the time were kind of, from 2022 to 2024, we're just kind of discovering what you can actually do with this tool. And one of the biggest kind of value points, obviously, as we know today, is that you were able to pull in, at the time it was probably like 50 data sources into one spreadsheet via API, and then do your orchestration of outbound. And it's not just outbound, it was inbound stuff, it was research, it was, it was also, many people or many sales teams leverage it for different things, or many market teams leverage it for different things, right? But what we started to realize is that some individuals couldn't really spend 3 to 6 months or spend X amount of money to actually go sit down and learn Clay. Well, if you did, happy days. However, a lot of B2B sales teams didn't. And that's where the kind of, the terminology go-to-market engineer definitely came from Clay. Now we see it everywhere. Some of these individuals are getting like 6-figure salaries, which is crazy, which are well-deserved by the way. But what you needed was a Clay specialist. If you didn't have a Clay specialist, you probably outsource it to a freelancer, or you'd get an agency to come in and set up all your outbound for you. So that's kind of the state of play when it comes to Clay.com, right? However, nowadays, what we can do, so a bit of context about our agency here. So it's me and my co-founder. We're a very lean team. We've kind of decided, okay, we don't need to bring in a freelancer or an in-house go-to-market engineer yet, right? So one thing that we started to see is when clients 8 to 10, around about the point we had about 8 clients at one point, it started to become a big friction point for us while using Clay. Now, it's not to say because we're not experts. I'm not going to say I'm the best Clay expert out there. However, we use it to a good standard. It's a really big part of our tech stack here at Prospectology. But one thing we started to realize is that the speed was becoming a friction point for us. Now, sometimes when you onboard a client, you, again, speaking from, just speaking out loud and being transparent, you want to do as much as possible for your legacy clients or your original clients that you first onboard at an agency, because you don't really have a system or you don't really have an offering that's that strong yet. So where some agencies out there might cap it at 5 campaigns per month or 10 campaigns per month, which is quite a lot, by the way. But what we started to realize is that we were finding it very hard to ship out campaigns at a high quality level in a matter of within a day, right? So it was quite difficult. Again, everybody's at different levels. Everybody has different levels of expertise and skill set, etc., etc. But Clay it became, our holy grail in order for us to kind of create campaigns on behalf of our clients and get them good results. But like I said, it became a friction point. The biggest friction point for us is the fact that we'd have to spend days in these Clay tables with certain restrictions to actually go ahead and build out some really quality, high converting campaigns. Now, it's not to say somebody could say, why didn't you just bring on board a freelancer or a go-to-market engineer to go ahead and actually do it for you to kind of spread the sort of the work along. But we didn't do that. We decided not to do that, right? And still to this day, we still haven't decided to do that. But I remember at the time around when Clay sort of changed their pricing, there was a little bit of outage. There was a lot of commentary online, Reddit communities, LinkedIn especially. We started to see Claude Code. Now, I think Claude Code came to my attention around about December, January of this year. Started using it like OpenAI or ChatGPT in a sort of similar capacity. However, then what we started to see is that now we're starting to see a lot of kind of sheep mentality or herd mentality, where a lot of these individuals now online are starting to talk about how they've replaced Clay.com with Claude Code via that. So this gave me an opportunity to really go in and I kind of dive into it. And again, this is very important. Like, we're in an era of innovation, and innovation is like week to week, month to month, right? If you're 6 months behind the new shiny tool, it can become, that it's also an opportunity, and it's also negative as well. So it's like, depending on who you are, of course, but it becomes a big friction point, but you have to stay on top of the trend. So for me, it's like, okay, let me just play around with Claude and see what I can get out of it. But it's only until recently I started to kind of play around with it, speak to it and prime it and prompt it to kind of get what I wanted. And what I wanted was to do what Clay does and more, and have more control over it, right? Now we can actually speak into a terminal and build a campaign out from start to finish, where it would take us 2 to 3 days to do a quality campaign inside Clay.com. We can now do that within 3 to 4 hours, right? Now, again, a lot of trial and error. I remember I was using Claude Code kind of blindly, using NAN to kind of create an orchestration engine to replace what Clay.com does. However, this, again, was hitting too many seams and walls, and a lot of trial and error. Anyways. But now what we can do is, and again, I'm going to show you a live build, so stay into the end so you can actually see how we do this and how we speak into the terminal to build a really high quality campaign for ourselves and for our clients. So we use ourselves as an example. I'll probably go after SaaS clients SaaS companies or a fintech example. But we have created something that enables us to really, really create high quality campaigns at a quicker level. So for me, it wasn't so much about the costing, it was more about the labor, how quick the labor was for our clients. Now we're at 10 clients today, and it becomes a real big friction point for us on how quickly we can ship out these campaigns. But let me show you, again, this is one of many workflows or one of many engines that we've built today, but happy to show it. You can screenshot it, or if you want me to give you this presentation, drop a comment in the description below, in the comments below, and I'm happy to share it with you. But what we've done is, we've created this engine, but before I go through it and kind of give it to you high level, ultimately, nothing has changed when it comes to outbound. And I kind of alluded to this already, but nothing has changed today when it comes to cold outbound. Like, the fundamentals are the same. It's just the shiny new tools have changed. That's it. And ultimately, I'm going to go through it one by one, but if you don't have these things on the screen right now, again, I've kind of tweaked it, and there's definitely more moving parts here. But ultimately, like, for example, if you don't have an offering, if you don't have a good offering, then nobody's going to be interested in what you're actually offering, right? So I get it today. I see a lot of, you do get a lot of slop out there from AI, of course, but you do get some good emails from individuals, and you do get some really bad. Majority of the time, it's quite bad. So somebody would say, hey, Michael, so you engage with XYZ's post. Does that mean X? And then just go straight into, can we jump on the call? But there's no offering. So I don't know what that individual is offering me. And if you can't explain it within an email within under 80 words, then it's not a good offering. And again, I'm privy to this as well. Sometimes we make mistakes in our copywriting, but you just get better and better once you tweak and tweak and tweak. But one thing I wanted to, again, I'm going to get onto that as well, but one thing we can do by building a Clay replica using the Claude Code terminal is that the speed to lead, or the efficiency of being able to ship out a really high quality campaign within 3 to 4 hours means that we can test new angles, we can test new hooks, we can test new call to actions, we can ABC test different messaging lengths or different messaging in general. Now that's where the secret sauce is here, right? So we can test new things really quickly. The ones that are doing or excelling at out are the ones that do a lot of testing. Now, a lot of testing is great because then you start to figure out, okay, what works for what vertical or what type of persona. And again, there's so much context and nuance behind that. But ultimately, going back to the point, if you don't have the fundamentals right, it does not matter which shiny tool you're using today. Now, if you don't have a value proposition, if you just keep talking about the features within your emails, you're going to get a lot of radio silence. If you don't have any sort of social proof, again, a lot of people argue with me here, like you can get some sort of, if you have a well-researched email or LinkedIn message or even a good cold call, you can kind of get away from that in terms of the proof. But if you have social proof and you're outreaching to a company and you have the proof in a similar vertical, in a similar industry as that individual, or sorry, in that same company that you're outreaching to, then it will grab attention. Because prospects want to know, have you helped a similar company in a similar situation, in a similar vertical? Now, ICP, again, this is just very basic, but what is the industry of the vertical that needs your product more than anybody else? Where is the geography? So, for example, if I'm selling payments and I'm only money licensed in the UK, therefore I can't sell to nobody in the EU or in America or US. So that's quite basic, right? Basic stuff. Size, again, is quite important. So we have a sweet spot here at Prospectology. It's that, 3, 4, startup to 30 employees. That's our sort of secret sauce or sweet spot here for us offering our services. Then what we do is it's good to always, when we onboard any client, we always ask them, can we see your closed won deals in your CRM or however they store that information? Because then that gives us a better idea of who are the clients or who are similar clients that need their services or have bought their services and now are still using them, right? So that's great information. Personas, again, is so important. Again, I see a lot, like we've worked with a lot of clients over the last year and a half, and one of the things they don't really know is when they're approaching a new vertical, they don't know what job title is relevant. Even though they do calls and even though they have so much information and data in their CRM, they don't know who's relevant to that offering or who's relevant for what they're offering or whatever product or service it is. That's where obviously the multi-persona hypothesis comes into play, and we can use that. And again, that's a video for another day. So I just wanted to explain that and touch on that because the fundamentals are the same, right, of outbound. You find a relevant key stakeholder that fits your ICP. You find the channel that you want to go after. Now, if you can't find their email, you go after them via LinkedIn. If they're not connected with you on LinkedIn, I wouldn't send an email. I wouldn't suggest that. But then if you can't get through to them, you just try and get them on the phone, right? So there's different ways in which we can get in front of your clientele from an outbound perspective. But we built this engine, very basic and very high level, where Claude does everything for us, and it connects the MCPs and the APIs, and it just brings it all together. But what's so important here in this engine here is that everything you see highlighted in blue is what Claude does. And we wanted to create an engine that does what Clay does and more, right? So we've got the list building, which is phase 1. As you can see on the screen, we use multiple different providers to get more coverage. From my experience, Arc and Prospio for list building is all you need, right? As an alternative to what's out there today. We use a company Enrich as well, because obviously with that, we can then find lookalike companies as well. It's just more data coverage. The more data you have, the better we can make, or the better the list will be for us to go and do some outreach for. ICP verification and stakeholder pick, again, that's the multi-persona hypothesis here, but we've set it to, I remember if you just do generic list building inside AR, Prospio and Apollo, and you're looking for 4 to 5 different key stakeholders per company, it will bring you a list of like 20, 30 different individuals. So what we've done is we've really hyper-focused on who are the most relevant. Now, the multi-persona hypothesis helps us with that. What this multi-persona hypothesis does, it gives us the most relevant job titles for that offering at that time. ICP verification is quite cool as well. It just fills out all the noise. Again, sometimes in clay.com, you can run that through your LLM, whether it's an OpenAI or a Claude. You can do that anyways, right? But then we're going to move on to phase 2, which is the email waterfall enrichment. Now, I'm pretty sure Clay made this famous where you do the waterfall enrichment, but we kind of follow the same system, right? So if you can't find it in X data source, it then moves on to the next one, and so on and so forth. And the more coverage you have, the better results you get. Very simple. Buying signals as well. Again, we can set this up, and again, Claude can do that and more. So again, Triggerfy it can be a complex sort of platform to use, but if you know how to use it and leverage it, you can get some great results. But buying signals, we call it the observation waterfall. So again, I'm going to touch on that again in a bit more detail, and you can see it live in action. But these where generic outreach still works, still can work, right? But if we can mention something of relevancy and something that shows this individual or company that you've done your research, something that's publicly observable, whether it's a funding, whether they're hiring an ESDR. One thing that I see a lot of B2B companies do, and also agencies do, is that they're so good at finding these signals, but they're not good at contextualizing it to the offering. Remember what I said about the basics, right? These are the basic fundamentals to get a high converting campaign. So we've got the buying signals, we do the company research. Again, it's really important to do a bit of research as well, because we want to understand, like, one line or a few lines on, who they are, what they do. So telling them, we don't want to spend too much time telling them who they are, because they know who they are. But it's also good for context. Then we want to, phase 3 is actually doing the copywriting. So we've set up our system, and again, I'm going to show you the crib sheet, but we've set up a system where it's like, it's if then. So if we find an email, the part that we'll definitely do an email outreach via Instantly or Smart Lead. If we find their LinkedIn, then we will obviously do a multi-channel approach, assuming that we also find a signal. So there's kind of, and these are the little things that I struggle to do inside clay.com. Again, just being transparent, there could be somebody out there that has set it up in a better way. But by doing it through the terminal, it's a lot more easier for us, and we find it a bit more efficient. But what we have to do, you have to continually test this. But what we can do is with this is that with the writing of the copywriting, we do the observation waterfall, which I know some competitors out there might give it a different name. But what we do is we find a real signal to mention in the copywriting to really grab their attention and add some relevancy. And what the copywriter does as well from start to finish is it will do 3 emails, 3 copywriting templates for emails, and then 2 emails for LinkedIn, or 2 LinkedIn messages for LinkedIn. But then we've layered in something which is the reply test, which is really cool, which is we ask Claude, would you reply to this email if you was the prospect? Now, we again, not sure if any individuals layered this into their clay.com tables. We've added this in, and what it does is it gives us an honest review from 0 to 10, and it will suggest, okay, would I reply to this? And it will score it out of 10. And now we've set it up in a way which is which is the last phase, which is review and send. So none of this will ever send a campaign without the human being, which is us in this situation, goes ahead and actually reviews it. So we would never just send off and blast out random messaging without actually having a review step. So we review it. Supabase is our review point here. So it's just a database that you can store all your leads. It kind of does replace Clay in this situation, and also it's good for us for deduplicates as well. So we've layered that into the engine. I'm going to show you anyways, which is pretty cool. It will score it out of 10. If anything's below 4 or 3, it then becomes a priority for us to review it and then just tweak the messaging. If anything's above 5 or 6, we then just give it a pass. Really, Claude's quite very hard to get a 8 to a 10. But again, that's just from our side, a bit more testing. And then lastly, we do the routing of where to send it. I mentioned it already, I alluded to it, which is find an email and the LinkedIn profile, and we find a signal. We'll then do multi-channel. If it's just only email that we find and there's no signal, we then obviously blast it out via email to get a bit more scale. And then obviously, if we don't find the email, and we will outreach them via LinkedIn as on the HeyReach platform. Now, again, there's many skills as well. Every step of the way, we can invoke this. So there's a review copy. So where we actually look at the copywriting itself, which I spoke about, list building as well, and the instructions on how to do that as well. So again, FYI, markdown file, if you don't know what that is, it's like your playbook. So it tells Claude on what the overall playbook is. We have a crib sheet as well. So again, we created this crib sheet so that me and my co-founder can actually basically use it as a plug and play for any sort of vertical or any new clients that come in or that we onboard. So the idea is it's like a list of instructions as well. And then we've also got your campaign configuration. Again, that's just what the computer does compared to the crib sheet, which is what the human layer tells them Claude to do. Now we've got all these skills here, as you can see here. And again, we'll touch on it throughout the video. But again, staying to the end, like I said to you, so you can actually see it live, a live build. But what really gets the attention of a lot of our prospects is something that is relevant, observable publicly, and we mention it into our messaging. I got an example today. So somebody looked at my LinkedIn profile. They took out key points of what's on my profile. I mentioned some of my latest posts as well, and I found it to be a really good message because they linked it back to what they were offering. Now, I replied to that individual, and again, we're going to jump on a call. So that was really good. But what we do with this observation waterfall is that if we do not find anything of relevancy or anything observable, i.e. a funding going for a funding round, or their company is Series A, B, C, or whatever it may be, or if they're hiring, or if there's a tech stack change, if we do not find anything of relevancy, then it goes down to the last category insight, or it goes to the role pain point. So this is where the multi-persona hypothesis comes into play and actually helps us do this. Again, this is what we have to do in order to make our messaging resonate. And unfortunately, it's just the way it is now. A lot of your key stakeholders are being spammed left, right, and center through the mailbox, via emails, and also via LinkedIn as well. So we have to stand out from the crowd, and we can do that using this observation waterfall. Now, as you can see on the screen, we're now in the terminal, and this is what the crib sheet looks like. Now, again, it's different for every single campaign that we create, but I just want to give you a bit of a flavor of what it looks like. So again, it gives you the part A, which is the inputs. So it's like your ICP fit, and we'll just fill in the blanks via the chat. Then it tells us about the list building. So how do we tell Claude how to do the list building, right? So this is quite important. And this is kind of what it replaces Clay to do this as well. So obviously we do that inside of clay.com, but we can get very, very granular with the detail. Now, sometimes when you use a lot of these tools, we can't be super specific on what we're looking for. And again, in clay.com, you'd run it through an ICP criteria fit prompt. And again, using an LLM to do that, which is great. But we can actually do that very early on inside the Claude terminal, right? So do we understand, do we know who the ICP fit is? What is a bad customer and what is a good customer? What do they look like? Now, this is so important. The list is just as important as the email infrastructure. The list is important as the messaging, right? There's so many moving parts here. But ICP verification as well, part C. We've also laid in our multi-persona hypothesis as well. Most companies today have 5 to 7 key stakeholders involved in the buying process. Now, depending on the complexity of the company and how big it is, we're going to have more chefs in the kitchen, right? So this is where the multi-persona hypothesis comes into play, and it's kind of a great way to kind of segment it and really, really tighten your messaging depending on the job title or the persona. So, what the CEO cares about is going to be very slightly different to what the CFO cares about. However, these two individuals or types of personas may be just as relevant as each other, right? One's probably a decision maker, the other one is probably the budget holder, as an example. So again, that's that. And then obviously we talk about the email enrichment waterfall, so how it does that. Again, I'm just giving you a flavor here. Observation waterfall, kind of spoken about it, but then it goes through this list here. So this crib sheet's great, by the way, to go after or to use it in any sort of campaign. If you want it, drop a comment below and I'm happy to share it with you. The copy and the quality, so through testing so many different angles and frameworks, we've just added in a bit of flavor of what to look for. So hard rules. If it doesn't meet the rules, it will then get rewritten. There's a reply test, which I mentioned. So this is where we ask Claude, would you reply to this email? And if it says no and it scores it below 3 or 4, we then have to rewrite that. And then obviously we just tell Claude to go to LinkedIn or go to email or do a multi-channel approach here. We have a skill MD file as well. Again, it's just more instructions as well. And then we also have a playbook. So this is the playbook. This is the overall playbook on what Claude does to actually use it step by step. So these are just some of the terminologies that you should know when going on to trying to use Claude Code to replace Clay. Okay, so now we're going to use a live example to build a campaign by just using my speech to text tool, which is Whisperflow. I'm going to build a campaign from start to finish. I will pause in between when there's a bit of a delay throughout this live build. Hey Claude, using the FinTech crib sheet, can you build me a campaign targeted to FinTech SaaS companies that are based or open banking based? We want it to be UK focused only. We also want it to be aimed at UK clients, UK companies only. We want them to be the size of the company. We want it to be between 5 and 30 employees. So please make sure that's correct. We also want to go after founders, chief revenue officers, and chief commercial officers as the main personas that we want to target. Now, try not to target more than 3 to 4 key stakeholders per company who are relevant. However, I want you to build this step by step along the way. And I want you to also give me an analysis of every step of the way. When you do the email enrichment, the waterfall, observation enrichment, every step of the way, please tell me what you're doing and give me a table summary and review. And help me build out the campaign from start to finish using the crib sheet, the campaign creation, and also the MD file. So please make sure you got that, and let's go ahead and build that from start to finish. Now, as you can see on the screen, it now has a plan, right? So we've created a previous campaign for fintechs, and it's now given us the plan every step of the way. As you can see, we geography. Before it was UK, US, that was something we were working on before. Now I've only asked it to do UK only and payments and open banking only as well. Again, this is just for example purposes, so you can see how it builds it live in the flesh. So now it will then give us the configuration, which has been built in the back end. And obviously this just helps Claude understand what it needs to do to kind of make this campaign go from 0 to actually being live throughout the campaign. Also to make clear as well is that we've set a mandatory smoke test inside of Claude Code, which it will do a real 2-lead run that it will just pull some examples or some personas and build it from start to finish, so you can actually see that the APIs and the configuration, the MCPs are actually working. So it does that mandatory dry run test, so we can actually see that everything's working. So now that, as you can see, we've done a dry run end to end, so just pulling 2 example leads from this setup. So as you can see, the Claude Code was created, nothing was written, nothing was sent. However, with the funnel that we can see 60 candidates, 2 was kept for the test. So first stage, we've done the list building using our Prospero and a company enrich. So 20 per source, 2 cross source were dupes removed. ICP check, so title, geography, size. 34 were dropped, as you can see on the screen. So again, it's just doing that classification and just tightening the ICP fit. AI classifier. So remember we spoke about, we only want to go after companies and open banking companies as well. So they dropped crypto companies, wealth companies, and generic SaaS, which is good. So with the MPH framework, all SMB tiers, we capped it at 4 per company, which is what we want. Be very granular with the detail. Email enrichment, I think it tried to use AI arc and bounce ban. However, Prospero ended up finding it via catch-all verification. Live signals, we didn't find no live signals, so it probably ends up going to a fallback to role pain point or role category. Then, again, like I said, so no signals were found there. We've done the company research, which is great. Copy and reply test. So 2 were priority. Remember, this is the human review layer of the 4th phase. So step-by-step review, so ICP checks, etc., as you can see on the screen. Then there's an AI classifier, so it took out a number of different companies. We did the waterfall enrichment, like I said. Prospero verified it. not AI, Arc, which is good. So again, more data coverage. So it's like a fallback with waterfall, and we didn't need better contact in this example, which again for me is really, really good. Observation waterfall, I mentioned it already, but predict leads didn't find no hiring, funding, or any sort of recent news. Again, this is what separates good copy to bad copy, but the signal in the end was the role pain point as a fallback, as like I mentioned. As you can see here, Claude has now mentioned that this is kind of normal for a company of size of 5 to 30, sorry. Again, this is just kind of something new. Again, we can also layer in some Triggerify engagement signals as well. We can get that set up too. So if there's any engagement on our competitors from our side, our competitors sort of posting, and some of these prospects that we've done some lead generation or list building with, if they've engaged with that, that could be a signal for us to go ahead and actually do some outreach for. Again, for example purposes, remember the human review aspect. So we can see that both leads landed on a red priority, meaning that they scored below 3, which isn't really good, but this is the reality of setting up a campaign using Claude Code. We have to layer this human aspect as well so we can review it. But what I'm going to just tell Claude to do is just crack on with it so we can actually see it from start to finish, and then look at some of the copy it's created for you guys to go ahead and maybe create something similar for yourselves. Just go ahead and create me 25 examples, so from start to finish, and then give me an overview of what you've done from start to finish. So I'll just pause in between this and then just see what we can find from start to finish. And then again, I'll just pause and I'll come back once Claude has gone through the whole list build of 25 leads as an example. Now, I've done a little pause there, but now we can see what it's built. So Claude Code has told us right away what it's done. So out of the funnel, 523 potential prospects, it's ended up with 25 finished leads, which is what we asked for. Same sort of situation, step by step. If we go right down to the bottom of the review bucket, again, none of them made it to 0. This is the reality of the human layer of review. So 18 are probably a maybe bucket, whereas 7 are a priority to actually go ahead and review. In terms of the verification, we can see that 17 were verified. Catch-all using Prospeo, better contact ended up finding the remaining 6 out of the 8, and only 2 out of the 25 leads only LinkedIn were found. We found some multiple different signal-based data layers. As you can see here, 22 of them had no signal out of the 25. So again, that's quite expected in terms of this ICP breakdown. So it gives us a breakdown as well, and then it tells us what to do next. So I'm actually going to prompt it again and tell us to give me some example copy so you can see what that looks like as well. Can you just show me some examples of the copy that you've created for all of the leads, the 25 leads? I just want to see what the copy looks like so I can review all of them. Now, Claude's run all the templates for the 25 leads we've tried to go after. Again, it's given us a review. So as you can see here, email 1, we've got email 2, on this example, email 3, just so you can see what that looks like, as well as 2 copies or templates for a LinkedIn outreach as well. So it also tells us which ones are the strongest copies. As you can see here, the ones with the multi-channel with real signals, and then it also shows off leads that they would cut as well. So again, this is just a human review of Claude just being very transparent and honest with us. Also, smaller things to note, it's a 7-9 priority, so we'd have to go back and actually rewrite these ones, as well as classifying, having a stronger classifying and tightening what that looks like for us in terms of tightening the ICP criteria fit. Now, what we would do after this is then go ahead and review them, rewrite all the copy on all the weaker ones that are 7 in priority. So anything that's scored below 3 or 4 or 3, sorry, we'll go ahead and actually rewrite some of them copies. And as you can see here, we have some of the copy here, which go ahead and review that and go ahead. And the next step after this would then just fire it across the appropriate channel, be it instantly or smart lead for email, or then we would then fire it to HeyReach to do some lead gen outreach as well. So guys, thank you for watching this video. If you are a B2B sales founder in HR, SaaS, or fintech, then by all means, if you want to have a conversation with us here at Prospectology, I'm going to hyperlink this Calendly link below in the description. Book in a time slot with us and we can build you something, do it for you, or we can actually offer you our new service, which is called Prospect Engine, where we actually build this whole infrastructure for you inside of the terminal and then hand it over to your sales team to go ahead and actually create some real high converting campaigns. Once again, my name is Michael. I'm the founder of Prospectology. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please smash the like button and I hope to see you soon in the next video. Bye.